NFL power rankings are down on the Atlanta Falcons across the board. Pretty much everyone, ESPN, The Athletic, wherever you look, they have the Falcons as a bottom 10 football team. Is that a fair evaluation of the team right now ahead of free agency and the draft?
I don't know. I get, it's entirely speculative. These lists are completely subjective. So however you view the rest of the league and the Falcons in it, that's, kind of your opinion. That's your answer. To me, I do think the Falcons are a little bit better than where they ranked them. I think ESPN, The Athletic, and NFL.com, nobody had them ranked higher than 25. Some had them as low as 29. That's a bottom 4 team in the NFL. That's pretty damning. And I think that, the roster as it currently stands, it's not worth that ranking, or it's that ranking isn't right, because whoever you talk to, whether it's national pundits, former players, former NFL coaches who go on these talk shows, they describe it in the same kind of sense. They go a quarterback away or a talented yet underachieving roster. So I think that, all you can do is look at the games, 7-10, 3 straight seasons, 8th overall pick, 3 straight seasons. So, to a certain extent, all they can go off is what we've done. And so maybe they're a little bit right. We're going to be higher on the Falcons than most because we are Falcons fans. I'm a little bit split because if you go in with this roster, Desmond Ridder, they're probably a bottom 5 team. The expectation is that's not the case.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking strictly at this roster right now, maybe they're a bottom 10 roster. I think bottom 5, I think that's reaching. I mean, even if you look at the last 3 seasons, you expect to have a better roster, and they still were the 8th worst team in football. So I think bottom 5 is definitely stretching and definitely a little too harsh. But bottom 10, I mean, listen, you finished with the 8th overall pick 3 straight years. You were the 8th worst team in football. And this roster right now does not look much different than what they've had in each of the last 3 seasons, especially when you consider guys like Calais Campbell, Bud Dupree. A lot of the guys that had a big impact on this team are now free agents. So that defensive line is very thin. The quarterback position is obviously a question mark that has to be answered. But if you're talking about situations, I think, if you're talking about what the future of this team is going to look like, right, which I don't know if they're really taking into consideration in these rankings, the Falcons, I think, are at least closer to average because they do have plenty of cap space to make additions onto their defense, fix the quarterback position. They have the full allotment of draft picks. And if they get a quarterback in the building that's worth a damn, I mean, you're talking about a team that could easily compete for the NFC South and possibly be a top 10 team almost overnight. So there's a lot of room for growth. But if you're looking at this strictly from right now and just judging the rosters based on where they're at right now and not just assuming that they're going to get better, because to be fair, that's not really a fair assumption. I mean, who knows? We could sign all terrible players. We could draft poorly. So
I don't know if that's a fair assumption because the proof we have is Terry Fontenot is very good at his job. Terry Fontenot is not going to spend frivolously and make, meat sandwich out of what we don't have that much cap space. What little cap space we do have. Now, we part ways with Taylor Heineke, Mike Hughes, Lorenzo Carter, Jonnu Smith. We have $25 million. That turns into around $45 million worth of cap space. Like Chase said, the 8th overall pick. Calvin Ridley signs an extension with the Jaguars. Now we have 2 second-round picks. Now, all of a sudden, I feel like the expectation is to be much better. Get Calais Campbell to return. That is something that's on the table. So I think the expectation should be that it should be improved, especially with Raheem Morris in the building. We already saw him leverage his relationships, to his coaching staff, bringing Zach Robinson over from Los Angeles. That's the expectation for free agency as well. So I think I disagree. I think the expectation is that the Falcons, with all this cap space that they could have and their full allotment of draft picks, they should get better and much better. I think much better.
Well, I think the expectation, without a doubt, is to be much better. Now, it's going to lie at the feet of Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris to get the right guys in the building and make the most out of the talent and the development and their last year's draft picks, this upcoming class and stuff like that. So, yes, the expectation is this team should be much better. But I'm just talking about when you're talking about NFL rankings and where this team is at right now. I don't blame anyone for doubting the Falcons. I really don't. Yeah. Now, we expect it to be better with all the changes to Raheem Morris and Terry Fontenot and all the stuff that we have at our disposal. But I do think if you're looking from the outside looking in and you're not a Falcons fans, I can't really blame you for having little faith in this organization to do things correctly, and especially fix the quarterback position, which could potentially hold this team back regardless of what other additions they make to the roster.
Yeah, I think that if you're looking at the roster today, whatever it is, February 13th, and you fast forward to, say, July 31st, August 1st, around that time, I think it's going to look much different. I'm not talking about just the quarterback position, which could be completely overhauled. I'm talking Heineke and Ritter both gone. Cut Heineke, trade Ritter, whatever it means, getting rid of potentially Jonnu Smith. He is a large cap hit, and for an offense in Zach Robinson that doesn't utilize that many two tight end sets, it feels like he's expendable. And then you got guys like Lorenzo Carter. You could definitely stand to upgrade that position. Richie Grant might not be necessarily back as a starter. DeMarco Helms, Grady Jarrett's supposed to be expected to be back. The cornerback position, the wide receiver room, all of these areas could look much different for the Falcons. I think that I don't blame anybody who's creating a power ranking today for putting the Falcons in the bottom 10 area of the league, because frankly, that's where they're at. Now, that's not to say the Falcons cannot be on the exact opposite side of things by the offseason when the offseason's done. You get a guy in here like Kirk Cousins or somewhere to compete right now, while also drafting somebody, say, I don't know, like J.J. McCarthy, to also kind of invest in the long term. This is a completely different team. They sign Kirk Cousins and don't do anything else. This team is already better than average. Already.
Yeah, it's already a top 15 unit. But we don't know what's going to happen in free agency. We do not know what's going to happen in the draft. So I understand why they are not necessarily picking us to be that good right now. Coming up after the break, Hassan Reddick could be available. Will the Falcons have interest?